And we are live. I hope I'm gonna be coherent tonight because it's entirely possible that I might have had a teensy bit too much sugar. I don't go to the movies all that often, so when I do, I sometimes buy a lot. I have not said the title yet. 3D Thoughts Alita Battle Angel film. I put in that particular order because I want people to realize that this is the 3D version I'm talking about, and that this is like a thoughts video rather than like a clip or something else. And you know, if you just get if it's like a small display and you can only see those, if you can only see 3D thoughts and then Alita, the Battle Angel part isn't as necessary, and the film part kind of goes without saying, because it's Alita Battle Angel instead of Battle Angel Alita. Yeah, I might have had too much sugar. I'm going to try not to get too rambly. Now, I think it's fairly appropriate that this came out so close to Valentine's Day. And yes, so different people have given different counts for running time. I wasn't able to note the exact minute, but this was not very much more than 2 hours. I've seen some places say 2 hours and 2 minutes. I think that might be right, but it's possible it's 2 hours straight. For sure it started at 4. Sorry, for sure it ended. The end credits started rolling at 6 in the evening, and usually the movie starts at the exact count, meaning it would be at exactly 4, but it's because the first 15 minutes or so, you know, first you've got ads, then you've got trailers, and those usually do take those 15 minutes, not more and not less. But you know, the only way for me to be absolutely certain the exact time that the movie starts would be for me to take out my phone, and even if I just click it once to get the display to light up just so I can see the time, even just for a few seconds, that's going to annoy people, and I don't want that on my conscience. So yeah, and I did not stay through the end credits because an article on Screen Rant says that there is no post-credits scene. This is kind of late in the video to be getting into it, but this video contains spoilers, including for other work by Robert Rodriguez and James Cameron. It's a long video, but there are time codes for different sections in the description box. And that is it, yes. So, let's see. I really have got to get better at doing these before I hit record. I'm at the section for my own film critic rating for this and my personal rating on a scale of 1 to 10. Film critic rating, I guess at the end of the day, I think it lands. See, I'm not 100% certain if it's a 7 or an 8, because there are things that pull it in either direction. I guess ultimately I think I land at 8. And personal rating is also an 8. Now, this is one of the first, for a while I thought it might be the first a manga / anime, yes, I know the difference, to live action adaptation that I watched. Keeping in mind, this was a manga before it was an anime. And it's, you know, it was an anime for like 2 seconds, slightly more than 2 seconds. It was an anime for 2 episodes. You know, this is not like with Akira, where you do have the entire story in the one, you know, which also came out as a manga before an anime. But anyway, you know, yeah. Is that why the story in this movie ends where it is? Was James Cameron just determined to make an adaptation of the anime and stuff? Anyway. Right. I have watched Speed Racer, and I only did so because the Wachowskis made it. And, you know, that was back when I still did watch everything they made. You know, I watched the trailers for Jupiter Ascending, and then I was like, you know what? I don't think I feel like I need to put myself through watching everything they put out. Because at the end of the day, I mean, outside of... I would still say Bound holds up, as far as I recall. And the first Matrix movie, I mean, have they really... I feel like there's definitely... There's good to the... You know, the one where they were like backseat driving, the... What's it called? V for Vendetta. And Ninja Assassin was certainly fun. But, I mean, other than that, Speed Racer was not a good movie. Anyway, this, like Speed Racer, has a race where they have to ride upside down at least a little of the time, with over a dozen in a race, all the personalities and backgrounds, even if they may be inferred, the backgrounds and such, and many of them will be eliminated during a race. Now, that brings us to the first section, 3D. Now, the 3D in this, in a lot of ways, it's like the Avatar 3D. It's subtle, it's about depth, it enhances the atmosphere drastically. It's not really... I recently watched the you know, Nostalgia Critic points out that the 3D that Rob Rodriguez does in his children's films is the kind of 3D that really like jumps out at you, you know, just and that's, you know, I don't think there's, you know, a lot of kids do want something that's big and loud and, you know, but anyway, it definitely doesn't work. It wouldn't be good for this kind of thing. And in this, really, what, like, there were times where they definitely could have gone really cheesy on, like, you know, you've got the guy. I should briefly, I am talking to viewers as if they have watched the movie. I'm not trying to sell it to people who haven't. Anyway, you know, you've got the guy, Gruishka, I want to say, with the, you know, each of his fingers like flies out. That could have gotten really cheesy. You know, you could have had like a real Friday the 13th 3D kind of thing. Was it called 3D or was it just called 3? I forget. Part 3, whatever. You could have ended up in that situation. I'm really glad they didn't. So, yeah, in some ways, Rodriguez definitely did respect that. You know, he said this is supposed to be James' movie. I'm just the one directing it. You know, he didn't want Cameron to be disappointed that he didn't direct the movie himself, which he couldn't because he is drowning in Avatar sequels. Now, and yeah, just a brief comparison. Sin City 2 also has 3D and also directed by Rodriguez. And there the 3D works well. There are these few amazing 360-degree shots, and yeah, it's hard to say. I'd say this has better 3D than that. Now, I did not watch this in IMAX. It's an hour train ride to go to the nearest IMAX theater and another hour to go back. And from what I recall, you have to constantly tilt your head in different directions to see everything. Where, you know, in a regular theater, if you sit back far enough, you can see everything at the same time, which is how I prefer to watch movies. Now, that brings us to notes taken while watching. Now, before I dive headfirst into the notepad, I'm gonna briefly touch on a couple of things that I didn't write out a lot of notes on, but that's just yeah. Briefly, I want to say that I feel like every single manga to live action design, change worked, incredibly well. And I really appreciate that they did, actually make some of the characters ridiculously huge. That is, I don't, I'm not saying that it would have worked, but the the graphic novel Sin City, I'm having trouble remembering their names. Schlub and Clump, I want to say is their name, or their names. I mean, they're basically like, one of them is like just this giant like tank of a man, and the other is like, let's see, like the size of a child maybe. Where in the movie they're played by regular actors. Yeah, the big guy's kind of big, and the little guy is little. But yeah, when I watched it, I was oh, okay, so they're not gonna look as ridiculously sized as they are in the graphic novel, and I appreciate that here they do actually. They're, I mean, ultimately it's only really Gruishka that's ridiculously like big, but no, wait, no, some of the motorball players also, yeah. And I kind of like Jack Courtney as Yashigan. I think that could work. It's I can feel a little bad for him and everyone else who made this if they don't get to do another, because Yashigan, if I recall, is a pretty big deal in 3 and 4, books 3 and 4, which would probably be the next movie would probably be books 3 and 4, since this is books 1 and 2. I should briefly say I read books 1 and books 3 through 9, I want to say. The library didn't have book 2, which sucks because that's, most of the stuff with Hugo is book 2, but yeah, so that was something. I feel like Nova looked just about perfect, and again, I feel like every major person who has a say in whether this becomes a huge, if this does well enough to warrant a sequel or not, I feel like every single one of them should be shown just like a collage of pictures of Nova from the comic, then watch Edward Norton, in just those few seconds we see him playing the role, and then should be given a brief outline of how compelling this character is. I really think that would change a lot of minds, because that is something, yeah. Anyway, one of the big things with this is there are too many subplots. They basically, excuse me, they basically did try to include everything from those first 2 books, where there's definitely stuff that you could have combined or not done. Like, I mean, I guess I kind of knew, but it was still a little surprised. They actually do go through the entire thing where for a little while there you think Ito's a serial killer, and he's the serial killer going around killing young women, and then Alita like follows him so that she can prevent him from killing again, and then it turns out that he's a bounty hunter, and the woman he was following was the serial killer of women. And like, I mean, I enjoyed reading that, but to actually devote this much time to it in this big action blockbuster, I mean, definitely the fight that resulted once, Alita and those cyborgs were face to face, it was great, but it's not, I mean, ultimately, you could have had just, she spots the battle axe he has in one of the rooms in the house, and she's like, "What's this?" And then he's like, "I'm a bounty hunter." And then we have that. You didn't need to go through all this stuff. It's just ultimately it doesn't really. I mean, to be fair, but yeah, you didn't need to have the misdirect. You didn't need to have several scenes dedicated to this setup of maybe he's a bad guy, maybe he's a serial killer. You know, the thing of her like them being attacked by Grishka that night. You don't need to have that. Like, if you really badly want to have this thing of her having to having to follow him and stop him from doing something, maybe she spots the battle axe and he's like, "Oh, I used to be a bounty hunter, but I'm retired. It's way too dangerous." And then she sees that the battle axe is missing. Then she goes, then she realizes he must have taken it out, and she runs after him. And instead of thinking that she's stopping him from killing a woman, she is trying to stop him from doing this violent thing that he said he resents. But yeah, you have this. There's kind of a lack of focus. That I already say that anyway. Like, why are the characters doing this thing at this point? And like, for a while she doesn't have a job. Then she's a hunter warrior. Then she's a motorball player for a little while. Just again, in the books, all this stuff happens, but I'm not entirely sure she's a motorball player until book 3. But I get why that was one of the big selling points. They really wanted motorball to be in the movie. Excuse me. James Cameron really wanted it in there, but yeah, I mean, considering that it ultimately, like, for example, a movie with more focus might have spent more time on her as a hunter warrior, or spend more time on her as a motorball player. But instead, it's just, for a while she doesn't have any occupation or hobby or the like. Then she, just now to dive into the notes. I quite liked the 20th Century Fox into 26th Century Fox. That kind of transition, I liked we didn't have to, I feel like CinemaSins is gonna try to be like a sin counter for reading, and then he's gonna realize, oh, we actually only have to read one line. But what I like about the the Fox logo, in part I think it's a neat transition, but more so I like the idea that there is a physical 20th Century Fox logo somewhere, and that over the coming, what was it like year 2563, if man is still alive, in over 540 years from now, the logo has deteriorated to that state. But either it naturally, every time it's been 100 years, it switches to the next one, or someone goes up to it, chips away the old number and puts in the new one, which is also, I mean, shouldn't it be the 21st Century Fox logo? Maybe they only change that later so that it updates per 100 years. Anyway, we see, is it Edo or Ido? I feel like in the movies they Edo. Anyway, he's cyborg part scavenging, and let's see, and Alita wakes up in bed, and at first she doesn't realize that she now has these cyborg hands and such, and she has, she feels out, like she, all that stuff. I thought that was really well done. That's another. If anybody says a single bad word about Rosa Salazar's performance here, I think they're wrong. It's incredible, the range she manages, the range the role calls for. And, the first time she tries to stand up, she falls over because she's not used to her legs yet. And, it got a chuckle out of the audience. It wasn't forced, and it didn't, pull the entire movie into comedy or something. And I like that Bushido as a cyborg doctor of other people other than Alita. Excuse me. And his assistant is like, if we keep accepting fruit as payment, we're gonna be picking it off the tree ourselves. I mean, I don't shake my ass to pay my landlord, or whatever that line is. And I liked her trying to eat fruit for the first time, and at first she doesn't realize you have to peel it, so she just bites into it and she's like, ah. And and then he peels it and she tries. It's so good. You should be very proud. And whoops, I wrote over the same thing. Let's see. You got a three-armed, cyborg guitar player, street musician. I like that detail. I don't know if it's like a nod to that part in Terminator 2 where, the playing, let's see. Sorry. Flying the helicopter and reloading the gun at the same time. And let's see. I didn't note it at the time, so I'll just say it now, even though it's a little early. I like the thing with Jennifer Connelly. For some of this, I'm going to use actor names, where she just walks right up to Alita and like just grabs her hand, like looking, and Alita's like, "What's your problem?" It is essentially like she's seeing a ghost almost, a poltergeist. I'm not sure if they're in the same species. The ghost of her daughter with another person's face. Right, yeah, she, let's see, the Hugo has to, get her back off, and he's like, "You're heavy, you're a cyborg," and it's like, "No, I was admiring your hand." Which actually, thinking about it, for like a fraction of a second, until he gets to know her well enough that he decides not to, some part of him is like taking stock. Is that he's like looking over, okay, so this is your hand, and looking at the parts, and he's like trying to figure out, should I, in a couple of hours when it's dark, should me and the others hold her down, strip off all the cyborg parts and sell them. And great neon lit city. Let's see. And and Jennifer Connelly says, that was our daughter's body, and you didn't destroy it. I couldn't. And we see them practicing motorball, and with them it looks like if skateboarding and American football had a marriage that I'm not entirely sure. I feel like I'm, of course, completely behind their right to wed, but I don't necessarily feel like I would. This is a horrible analogy. What I'm saying is, at first, it really looked like something I wouldn't enjoy watching. But I will say that you see two actual motorball games. Those were great, and after a little bit, the montage of the motorball practice, it's like, we're gonna get through this. We're gonna need a montage. Okay, let me think. So the other guy hits her in the head. I forget what is elbow, or he didn't punch her in the face. I don't think that would have been against the rules, but what he did wasn't against the rules. It was just a jerk move for someone who's brand new at the game. But yeah, I think he elbows her in the face, and excuse me, isn't at least part of her head metal? Would it really not hurt at all? He's not a cyborg at all. That's a human. If you tried to elbow a piece of metal, your elbow would be messed up afterwards. But I did like that she gets to get revenge. She's like, no, it's fine. I'm going to keep playing. And she gets him. And we find out that Jen is building monsters for Motoball, and Ito does not approve. I like the whole thing with chocolate. And here we briefly meet Zapan, played by Ed Skrein. Far, far better here than in the fourth Transporter movie. See, I just gotta briefly say, I enjoyed him in the first Deadpool movie. I think he just didn't get as much of a chance to really stand out. But here, he was amazing. If he had been the only villain, I would have been perfectly fine with that. I loved every single second that he was on screen. Everything he said, the way he moved, all of it just spot on perfect. When he's taunting Alita and she taunts him back. And all of these things, I absolutely loved it. He was so perfect, and I want to see him in more stuff. And we find out that Hugo wants to go to, was it Salem? I might just call it Teferi's. That's what I'm used to in the manga, sorry. And he says Alita must be from Teferi's, since, scrapyard, that's where stuff lands, that falls from there. Let's see. Yeah, and, Alita follows Ito, following a young woman at night, and it's stuff that we could ultimately skip. And we have the serial killers, and I did think Jackie Earle Haley, I want to say, perhaps most known for playing Rorschach, I thought he was really, really great as Grishka. Let's see. And and Grishka comes back and says to Jennifer, "Look what she did to me." I think I saw someone say that they thought the action was ruined, like spoiled by trailers. I didn't think so at all. I definitely, when I watched the trailers, I thought it would be, but the action was great. I still really, really got into it. But I do think people need to get better at editing action trailers. They used to be better. Anyway. And you have Nova who goes, "Bring her to me." I want to explain. We get explanation of the spy chip. And Nova possesses something. I didn't finish this note, I don't think. The motorball's really, really cool looking. And we see these guys jacking the grind cutters of the motorball player. And we realize that Hugo is one of the jackers. He's jacking on in there. Alita's not going to like that one bit. And I forget her name, but the female serial killer that Alita and Ito face, before facing them, she used to be beheaded, but then Alita beheaded her. And Alita walks underwater into the ship. Also, I personally never found the eyes distracting, and I definitely didn't think that they were, uncanny valley, but your mileage may vary, but I would definitely say the eyes, obviously you're not looking at a regular human face. It's not really the idea at all. You're not supposed to forget that when you're looking at Alita, you're not looking at someone who is or was. I don't know. I haven't read enough of the manga to know for sure if she ever was technically human. But as far as I understand, she was always, as far as I remember from what I read, we haven't seen her as just a regular human being. She was, made into a cyborg without having much, it's not like with Hugo here, where, he spends a bunch of his life as a normal human, and then he gets put into a cyborg body to save his life. Anyway, I really don't think, we see much crazier characters in this than that, so, excuse me.